You've probably spent hundreds of these and had no idea. Today on Coin Secrets Empire, we reveal the top 3 Washington quarters that could be sitting in your change jar right now, worth up to $143,000. One of them was minted during World War II and has a mistake so big it'll blow your mind. Stay locked in. Let's get into it. If you think every quarter in your pocket is just ordinary change, then the 1998 Washington quarter will make you think twice, because behind its familiar silver-colored surface lies a story that combines artistry, politics, economics, and a pivotal moment in the history of American coinage. The 1998 quarter was more than just the last regular year of the classic Washington design before the monumental change that began with the 50-state quarters program. In 1999, it represents the closing chapter of an era that had started in 1932 when the United States Mint decided to honor the bicentennial of George Washington's birth with a coin that would not only circulate widely, but also symbolize the enduring legacy of the first president of the United States. The obverse of the 1998 Washington quarter features John Flanagan's portrait of George Washington based on the bust sculpted by French artist Jean-Antoine Houdon. In the late 18th century, this design had been in use for more than 6 decades by 1998, making it one of the longest-running coin designs in American history above Washington's head. The word liberty stands as a reminder of the very foundation upon which the United States was built. To the left of his profile appears the phrase, "In God we trust," and below is the date, 1998, marking the final year before the statehood quarters began. On the reverse of the coin, the image of a heraldic eagle with its wings spread occupies the center. This eagle, perched upon a bundle of arrows and framed by olive branches, symbolized both strength in defense and the pursuit of peace. This reverse design, like the obverse, had remained largely unchanged since its debut. The production of the 1998 quarter came at a fascinating crossroads for the mint and for collectors. By this time, quarters had been made not of silver but of copper-nickel-clad composition for more than 30 years, following the Coinage Act of 1965, which removed silver from circulating dimes and quarters and reduced it in half dollars. This change had been driven by rising silver prices and the need to maintain a practical circulating coinage. The 1998 quarters were struck at the major mints of the United States: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, each mint mark carrying its own level of appeal for collectors. The Philadelphia Mint struck coins without a mint mark, while the Denver Mint used the D-Mint mark, and San Francisco produced proof coins in both clad and silver, versions intended specifically for collectors. What makes the 1998 Washington quarter particularly compelling is that it was the last issue of the regular Eagle reverse before the launch of the 50-state quarters program, which would revolutionize American coin collecting. Beginning in 1999, the U.S. Mint introduced a new design for each state released in the order of statehood, and this program captured the attention of millions of Americans who had never collected coins before. But in 1998, nobody knew just how successful the program would be, and so the coins struck in that year quietly became the symbolic end of an era that had lasted more than 65 years. When examining the mintage numbers, the Philadelphia Mint produced well over 1 billion 1998 quarters, while Denver also struck hundreds of millions, ensuring their widespread circulation. Yet it is not the rarity of the coin in terms of sheer numbers that gives it significance. Rather, it is the historical context and transitional role it plays. For collectors, condition matters greatly, and 1998 quarters can still be found in circulation, though most are heavily worn. However, high-grade, uncirculated examples with sharp strikes, brilliant luster, and minimal contact marks are valued, particularly when certified by professional grading services. Proofs from San Francisco, especially the silver proofs, remain popular with collectors due to their mirror-like finishes and frosted design elements. These coins are often included in United States Mint proof sets, which were sold directly to collectors in 1998. The story of the 1998 quarter also cannot be told without exploring the long history of the Washington quarter itself. First issued in 1932 as a temporary, commemorative coin. It was intended to honor George Washington's bicentennial birthday, but it proved so popular that it replaced the standing Liberty quarter permanently. Flanagan's design carried with it the neoclassical dignity of Washington, while providing a clear and functional design that worked well for mass production and circulation over the decades. Subtle modifications were made to the portrait and relief, often due to technical reasons or aesthetic preferences, but the core design remained intact through 1998. By the late 1990s, the Mint recognized that public interest in coinage had grown stagnant, and collectors were yearning for something new. Congress approved the 50-state quarters program in 1997, and it was officially launched in 1999, so the 1998 quarter effectively became the final traditional issue of the Washington Eagle Quarter series. This imbues the coin with a special legacy for collectors, historians, and numismatists. It is the last chapter of one of the most iconic American coin designs, bridging the old and the new. When we look deeper into the cultural role of the 1998 quarter, it represents more than money. It represents continuity in American life. Countless people used it in everyday transactions. From buying a newspaper to making a phone call, it passed through vending machines, toll booths, and cash registers. It jingled in the pockets of millions who never realized that this ordinary piece of change carried the final image of the heraldic eagle before a great transformation was to come. In this way, the 1998 quarter becomes a time capsule, capturing the last moment of the old before the nation embraced a bold new experiment in coin design that would shape the future of collecting. For decades to come, collectors often look for varieties and errors in quarters, and while the 1998 issue does not have as many famous varieties as other years, there are still error coins that fascinate numismatists, such as off-center strikes double. Dies and coins struck on wrong planchets. Each error coin tells its own story of the minting process, and these anomalies turn an ordinary piece of change into a prized collectible worth far more than face value. The 1998 Washington quarter, therefore, is not just another year in the long history of American coinage. It is the coin that marks the end of one of the most enduring chapters in U.S. numismatic tradition. Its design speaks to the artistry of John Flanagan. Its history reflects the evolution of American coinage from silver to clad. Its place in time connects the world before the state quarters. With the explosion of collecting enthusiasm that followed, it remains a coin that every collector who studies American quarters must understand. Because to know the 1998 quarter is to understand the turning point that reshaped the future of numismatics. Have you ever held a coin in your hand and wondered what stories it carries across time and history? The 1994 Washington quarter is one of those pieces of American coinage that may seem ordinary at first glance, but in reality, it is part of a long tradition stretching back decades, and it holds significance not only for collectors, but also for anyone interested in the broader history of United States currency. To understand the importance of the 1994 quarter, we must first journey back to 1932. When the Washington quarter was first introduced, the coin was created in honor of the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, and the design chosen for the obverse was the work of sculptor John Flanagan, whose portrait of Washington was based on the classical bust created in 1785 by French sculptor Jean-Antoine Houdon. Flanagan's design was instantly recognizable, with Washington's head facing left, the word liberty arching above him, the phrase, "In God we trust," to the left, and the date of minting below the reverse of the coin initially carried a bold heraldic eagle with wings, spread a bundle of arrows in its talons, and an olive branch symbolizing peace and strength beneath it. All this design became a staple of American coinage, and it remained largely unchanged for decades. The 1994 quarter therefore represents a continuation of this proud lineage, but also a fascinating point in numismatic history as it was issued just a few years before. The United States launched its groundbreaking 50-state quarters program in 1999. That program would forever alter the face of the Washington quarter. But in 1994, collectors were still receiving coins in the traditional eagle reverse design. The 1994 quarter was struck at multiple mints, including Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. And each of these mints produced different types of coins. The Philadelphia Mint, with its no mint mark issues, produced millions for circulation. The Denver Mint, marked with a small d, also released large numbers, and the San Francisco Mint produced proof coins both in traditional copper-nickel clad and in 90% silver versions for collectors. These proof strikes were struck with special care and mirrored fields that highlighted the details of Flanagan's design. In a way, ordinary circulation strikes never could. The context of the 1994 quarter is also tied to the broader economy of the United States. The early 1990s were years of recovery. Following the economic recession of the late 1980s and early 1990s, unemployment rates were falling. Technology companies were beginning to grow, and the American public was experiencing a new wave of confidence. Coins of this period circulated widely. Through booming suburban economies and through a growing consumer culture that relied heavily on cash transactions, even as electronic banking and credit card use began to rise, the quarter, in particular, remained one of the most useful denominations. Being essential for vending machines, parking meters, and daily commerce, from a numismatic standpoint, the 1994 quarter is interesting because while it is not considered rare in the traditional sense, there are certain varieties and errors that make it highly collectible. Examples include coins struck slightly off-center, double die, obverse, and reverse varieties, and coins with planchet errors. Collectors often search rolls of 1994 quarters in hopes of finding such mistakes, which can transform a coin worth only 25 cents into one valued at hundreds of dollars. Condition also plays a critical role. Mint state examples graded MS-65 or higher by professional grading services such as PCGS or NGC command premium prices, while proof examples, especially those in deep cameo contrast, also attract significant interest. As for design, the 1994 quarter shows the enduring power of Flanagan's artistry, although some critics by the 1990s argued that the details of the design had worn down over decades of use. The mint had made subtle modifications to restore sharper details. Washington's hairlines were often weak on earlier strikes, but in the 1990s, coins showed improved sharpness. Collectors also pay attention to strike quality, luster, and the presence of bag marks when evaluating these coins. One cannot discuss the 1994 quarter without acknowledging the transition that was about to come in just 5 years. The Washington quarter would undergo its biggest change since 1932 with the introduction of the statehood series. But in 1994, the quarter still embodied the classic eagle reverse that had become a familiar sight in the pockets of Americans for more than 60 years. This makes the 1994 quarter something of a final chapter in the long-running traditional era before modern commemorative and state-themed designs dominated the quarter series. The production figures also tell an important story. The Philadelphia Mint struck over 1 billion quarters in WTU 1994, while the Denver Mint produced a similarly massive number, meaning that in circulation the coin is common. Yet despite its commonality, its place in history as part of the pre-statehood group gives it an identity. Collectors appreciate San Francisco. Meanwhile, produced proof sets that year, which were sold to collectors directly through the United States Mint. These proofs often remain in pristine condition, housed in protective cases, and they show off the artistry of the design in ways circulation. Strikes cannot. The cultural significance of the Washington Quarter Series also cannot be overlooked. By 1994, the image of George Washington on the quarter had become one of the most reproduced portraits of any historical figure in American history. With billions of coins struck and distributed, his likeness was instantly familiar to people across the world who encountered U.S. currency abroad. This familiarity reinforced Washington's role not only as the first president, but also as a symbol of stability and leadership in a constantly changing global landscape. The eagle on the reverse, though eventually replaced, still conveyed the traditional American values of strength, unity, and readiness. To defend peace for 2 hours, we could dive deeper into the technical aspects of minting in 1994. The presses used by the mint, the quality control processes, the role of die engravers, and how coinage laws of the United States governed the specifications of weight, diameter, thickness, and metallic composition. The copper-nickel-clad composition of circulation strikes featured outer layers of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core. This gave the coin its familiar silvery appearance and durability. In circulation, yet the San Francisco silver proofs, struck in 90% silver and 10% copper, recalled the traditional silver composition of quarters minted prior to 1965, when the Coinage Act eliminated silver from circulating coinage. This contrast between modern-clad and traditional silver versions makes the 1994 proof set highly interesting to collectors. In summary, the 1994 Washington quarter is not just a small piece of metal, but a tangible artifact of American history, tied to the legacy of George Washington, the artistry of John Flanagan, the evolution of the United States Mint, and the economic and cultural currents of the 1990s. It stands as one of the final representatives of the classic eagle reverse era before the great transformation of the state quarters program. It is a coin both ordinary and extraordinary, common in number yet rich in meaning, and endlessly fascinating for collectors, historians, and everyday Americans alike. Imagine holding in your hand a piece of history, a coin that at first glance seems like ordinary pocket change, but when you look closer, you realize it carries the story of America, its economy, its politics, and its culture. This is the 1992 Washington quarter, a coin that may appear simple, yet behind it lies decades of tradition, design, evolution, and minting history. And in this journey, we will uncover every detail, every aspect, and every layer that makes the 1992 quarter far more than just 25 cents. The Washington Quarter Series began in 1932 to honor the bicentennial of George Washington's birth. It was designed by sculptor John Flanagan, whose portrait of Washington was based on the neoclassical bust by Jean-Antoine Houdon from 1785. For 60 years, the Washington quarter remained largely unchanged, keeping the same portrait of Washington on the obverse and the heraldic eagle on the reverse. 1992 was a fascinating year in the life of the Washington quarter because it came at the very edge of a great transition in American coinage history. It was one of the last years before the United States Mint shifted its focus toward the upcoming state quarter program, which launched in 1999. In 1992, the Washington quarter was struck in multiple forms, including the standard circulation-clad quarters, minted in Philadelphia and Denver, and the special proof issues minted in San Francisco for collectors. This was also the very first year when the United States Mint introduced silver-proof sets after decades of absence from regular coinage. Collectors had the chance to once again own a Washington quarter made from 90% silver. These silver proofs are among the most significant highlights of 1992 quarter production, and they became an instant favorite for numismatists who valued both the beauty and the tradition of silver coinage. The obverse of the 1992 quarter still displayed the classic Flanagan portrait of Washington facing left with the word Liberty above, the head, the motto, "In God We Trust," placed on the left, and the date, 1992. Beneath the bust, the mint mark was seen just to the right of the ribbon in Washington's hair for Philadelphia. No mint mark was used, while the Denver quarters carried a D mint mark, and the San Francisco proofs carried an SAN, the reverse. The heraldic eagle design remained unchanged, a powerful symbol of American strength and unity. The eagle with wings outstretched perched on a bundle of arrows with olive branches. Beneath continued to embody the dual concepts of war readiness and peacekeeping. This reverse design had been used since 1932 and would remain in place until the launch of the 50-state quarter program in 1999, making the 1992 quarter one of the final pieces to carry this long-standing image production numbers in 1992 were substantial. The Philadelphia Mint struck over 384 million quarters, while Denver produced over 390 million. This made the 1992 quarter very common in circulation. However, the San Francisco Mint produced both clad proofs and the first-ever silver proofs in this series. The clad proofs numbered in the millions, while the silver proofs were minted in smaller quantities, making them especially desirable today. The silver proofs were struck with deep cameo finishes, creating a sharp contrast between the frosted devices and the mirror-like fields, adding a beauty that made them stand out in collector sets. When we examine the significance of the 1992 quarter, we see more than just numbers and designs. This coin captures the Mint's effort to balance tradition with innovation. The decision to reintroduce silver proofs was a nod to collectors who longed for the classical look and feel of silver, while the standard clad quarters continued to meet the practical needs of everyday commerce. The year 1992 was also a time of economic change in the United States. The nation was recovering from a recession in the early 1990s and everyday pocket change. Like the Washington quarter was a constant presence in the lives of millions of Americans. The durability and reliability of the quarter made it the most heavily used coin in circulation, from vending machines to toll booths to laundromats. The Washington quarter of 1992 was a workhorse of American commerce, while also being a canvas of national pride, errors, and varieties. From the 1992 quarter also fascinate collectors today. Like all coins produced in high volumes, the 1992 quarter saw its share of minting errors, including double dies off center strikes and clipped planchets. Some of these errors have become valuable in the numismatic market, with collectors willing to pay significant premiums for well-defined and dramatic mistakes. Even ordinary 1992 quarters in high-grade uncirculated condition or proof deep cameo silver strikes command collector attention and value. The legacy of the 1992 Washington quarter lies in its unique place in history. It was a bridge between the classic era of Washington quarters with the heraldic eagle reverse and the modern era of the state quarters that would soon capture the imagination of millions of Americans around the country. It was also a bridge between base metal coinage and the reintroduction of silver, a blend of practicality and tradition. So when you look at a 1992 quarter, you are not just looking at a coin, you are holding a symbol of American heritage, a token of transition, and a piece of metal that has traveled through time, carrying with it stories of minting artistry, economic change, and the enduring legacy of George Washington himself. In the next 2 hours, we will dive deeper into every detail of this coin, from its design origins to its production, techniques from its minting facilities to the role it played in commerce, from its errors and varieties to its collector demand. Today, by the time you finish this journey, you will never look at a simple quarter the same way again.